Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Heather Hirsch. Thank you so much for tuning into my podcast, Health by Heather Hirsch. If you are new here, you have landed at the best place to learn about all things perimenopause, menopause, and hormone replacement therapy. This week, I want to do a WTF episode. And I don't mean what the F-U-C-K, I mean what the 40s, because I just got finished recording my audiobook. Yes, I have a new book coming out. It's called The Perimenopause Survival Guide. I'm so excited for this book to hit shelves because so many women have no idea what is coming for them in their 40s. For a lot of us, we think about menopause and we think, oh, that's for my mom. That can't be anywhere where I'm near. But the truth of the matter is that symptoms of our hormones declining can start in our 30s and into our 40s. And for a lot of women, we don't piece together that that's what could be happening. We don't piece together that it could be hormonally related. What that means far too often is that we're going to 5, 6, 7 different clinicians. That's actually what the research says before we get the right diagnosis. So you might go to your primary care doctor and say something like this: hey, I'm having night sweats, I'm gaining weight, and I feel really fuzzy and fatigued. And your doctor might look at you and say, well, okay, that could just be life. And you're like, yeah, it could just be life for sure. Because one, as women, we're used to just sticking it out, right? I mean, we have periods every month, we bleed every month, like we can do hard things. But then you say, no, it's really bothering me. Now my mood's being disrupted because I'm not functioning well at work. My productivity is slipping. Oh, maybe I have ADHD. So he or she sends you to someone to do neurocognitive testing. Maybe it's a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and then you've got those night sweats. So she sends you to get a sleep study and you're gaining weight. So maybe you get your thyroid checked and you see an endocrinologist, right? Does this all sound familiar? When actually, what could really be happening is just one thing that actually ties them all together. It could be that your hormones are starting to decline in perimenopause. So that would be your estrogen, your progesterone, and your testosterone. Now, you might be thinking, well, okay, am I doomed? Because this sounds shitty, but the good news is that no. See, what's happening now is that we're actually starting to talk. We're talking to each other. Clinicians are starting to relearn this process, which is universal, meaning that all women will go through perimenopause and menopause if they live long enough. And education truly is power. Once you know what it could be, then you can get a better diagnosis and then you can get more targeted and better treatment options. That's what we all want, right? To thrive, not just scrape by and survive. Okay, so that's a little bit about perimenopause. And that's why I wrote a whole book on this topic. Also going through perimenopause myself. I'm about to be 43 and I experienced those same things: night sweats, brain fog, weight gain, and oh, here's a bonus: rage, and irritability. Yeah, I knew when I started trying to throw out all my kids' toys, like in 1 second, I went from like nice mommy to scary mommy, that it could be perimenopause. But even for me, someone who's been doing this for 12 years, it took me time to put it together. So my book comes out in October, but if you pre-order my book, I'm running a lot of really cool incentives. The first one that I'm doing is a coffee chat with me when you send in your craziest perimenopause survival stories. And I have a winner or two in mind, but some of you also submitted some perimenopausal stories so that I could use them on social media. And so I'm gonna go through some of those today and make a little comments and just do a lot of teaching about symptoms and signs that you could be in perimenopause. So let's dig into what I got. All right, this one's from Katie. She reports, Dr. Hirsch, I'm having brain fog, insomnia, weight loss, and joint pain. Okay, let's break down a lot of this. First of all, really common. And a lot of this has to do, again, with the declining hormones. So let's get into what do the declining hormones actually cause symptom-wise. So one of the things that happens first is progesterone starts to naturally decline. Now, progesterone progesterone, for many women, is the body's calming hormone. And if you ever were pregnant, progesterone is the hormone that rises the first trimester of pregnancy when you feel so sleepy, because it wants to just kind of protect you while you are working on creating that first trimester and that nice environment for the fetus. But progesterone starts to decline in perimenopause, actually even more steadily, and oftentimes even before estrogen and testosterone decline. So what happens? You can get a lot of anxiety and insomnia as progesterone is declining. And this is really important to know, because if you didn't know that there was such a common reason for you to feel more insomnia or anxiety, what's going to happen? Again, you're going to go to the doctor and maybe get the wrong diagnosis and maybe be put on anti-anxiety medications. In fact, that's what happens to the majority of women. But I know, because I've been up to this for the last 12 years, often when we replace progesterone in the form of micronized natural progesterone, aka prometrium, that can really ease that insomnia and anxiety. Now, what about the terrible brain fog? Because I have this too, and it's really embarrassing to have brain fog, especially when you're on stage or you're speaking or you're doing a podcast and you get brain fog in the middle of what you're saying. Ouch. And it really hurts your self-esteem. Well, as estrogen declines, where we have the most estrogen receptors is actually in our brains. In fact, that's why we get hot flashes, because as estrogen lowers, the part of our brain that controls our temperature, the hypothalamus, is also affected. So as estrogen declines, we can get brain fog in the form of word finding difficulty, or even just like life finding difficulty. Ever walk into a room and have no idea what you were walking in there for or what you were going to get? Yeah, that is your very typical perimenopausal brain fog, and you can thank that declining estrogen. And same thing for those joint pains. So you're thinking to yourself, I know, Dr. Hirsch, this is not sounding good. But don't forget, the more you know, the more you know. So we have estrogen receptors in our joints. Yes. And so as estrogen declines, this is a big reason for joint aches and pains. So what happens to women? They go to their doctor, say, I have joint aches and pains. And guess what? They're told, well, you probably have wear and tear, something called osteoarthritis. But actually, it's what we now call the musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause. The musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause. I know, it's a mouthful. And estrogen can help. Declining estrogen and sometimes declining testosterone is also at play when we're gaining weight. And this stinks, right? Because you might be saying, like many of my patients, I haven't changed my diet, I haven't changed my exercise regimen, so why am I gaining weight? We actually know that women who take hormone therapy, just follow along with me here, actually gain less weight, but more importantly, have less diabetes. What does that mean? Well, in my brain, since I'm a clinician, I think this actually helps to keep the sensitivity to insulin up. That's what you want so that you don't gain weight. So there's a lot that happens with those declining hormones. And thank you so much, Katie, for putting in some of the most common symptoms that women get in perimenopause. All right, let's go on. All right, here's another good one from Anna. And she writes, I've been going from doctor to doctor, being dismissed, ignored, and even laughed at. So we talked about that, right? On average, women see 5 to 7 healthcare professionals before they get diagnosed with perimenopause and before they get the right treatment. That's like a full-time job. That's why I really want perimenopause to be its own public service announcement, because we are wasting tons of healthcare dollars when women are going from doctor to doctor to doctor, missing work, taking off of work, taking disability, not being productive at their jobs. Their self-esteem is crashing because their clinicians don't know that every woman on the planet who lives long enough will go through perimenopause. So I got you, and I'm just as annoyed as you. So let's do something about it. So she writes, I'm having heavy periods and anemia, recurrent urinary tract infections, and I feel like a shadow of myself. So let's talk about this. In my book, I have a whole chapter on heavy bleeding. In fact, I was on TikTok late last night, and I saw Jenny McCarthy say she was writing a book about the same topic. And she said, I've bled through my pants on national TV. Where have you girls bled through your pants? And I'm thinking, one, we are so tough because yeah, this does happen. But you feel like you're going through puberty in reverse, right? You're like, no. This kind of heavy periods, bleeding, cramping, doubling over, like, wasn't that middle school? Why is this happening again? And perimenopause can absolutely feel like puberty in reverse. So here's what's happening. Again, lowering of those three hormones, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. Progesterone is like the conductor of the uterine lining. It helps to kind of keep it nice and steady and smooth sailing so that if you're not using contraception, you have a period about every 21 to 35 days, or, the perfect woman, there isn't one, will have a period every 28 days. But as progesterone kind of says bye-bye, your uterus is just going haywire. And in perimenopause, not only is your estrogen steadily declining, it's very volatile. It can spike and, just do whatever it wants. So that means you can have a lot of heavy bleeding. And the reason for the heavy cramping, this can be something called adenomyosis, something that women tend to develop in their 40s. It's really when the muscular part of the uterine wall starts invading into that uterine lining more and more and more, so that as you start cramping, it literally feels like someone is wringing out your uterine lining. If you've had it, you know. So in my book, I have a whole chapter devoted to going over how you can treat heavy bleeding. It's interesting because so many women are really dismissed, even when they're like, I am anemic. So what is anemia? That's actually when your red blood cells drop so low that you feel chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue. It's not great. So you want to have a doctor check a complete blood count. That's how they could see if you have anemia. But this is really serious. So we have to stop the bleeding. Now, there is some medical management, and I cover this all in the book. So go grab the Perimenopause Survival Guide. I've got more incentives coming up for you as well. So save those pre-order receipts. But it is imperative that we slow and stop the bleeding. And there's a couple ways that you can do this. Now, warning, I am a doctor, but not your doctor. And so be sure to talk with your clinician about what option's best for you. But here's a few things that you can do. You could consider an intrauterine device. An intrauterine device releases progesterone. Well, there's one that doesn't. That's called the Paragard. That can make your periods heavier. Don't use that one. An intrauterine device releases progesterone into the uterine lining. And so now you've got that steady state of progesterone, right? And so the lining becomes more stable and actually over time really thin. So there's nothing that builds up and therefore nothing to come out. An IUD can also last 5 to 7 years, be great contraception, and bonus, it can even be a part of your hormone therapy regimen. So for example, if we took Katie and we mixed her with Anna, we put in an IUD, we could then put an estrogen, say patch or gel or spray to her regimen, and she's got estrogen and she's also got progesterone, keeping the uterus healthy and stopping her from having more bleeding. All right, if you don't want an IUD, we could also try birth control pills. Now I know what you're thinking. Come on, Dr. Hirsch, I'm 46. I was on birth control pills in my 20s. I've had 3 kids. I don't want to go back on birth control pills. Okay, fair. I like to call them perimenopausal pills because I like to think that we do more than just reproduce. But what birth control pills can do, again, is provide a steady state of estrogen and progesterone, especially if you take them continuously, which means no placebo pills. You can therefore create a steady lining. Nothing builds up, nothing comes out. Bonus, also contraception. Okay, there's a few other things that you could do. You could try having an ablation. This is kind of where they cauterize or actually even scar the uterine lining, or a hysterectomy, which is a surgical removal of the uterus. I highly, highly, highly recommend you use medical management. Either you try the IUD or birth control pills before you go on to something like surgery. Now, you might be thinking, what about hormone therapy? Can that help? And the truth here is not usually the best option for heavy bleeding. And unfortunately, sometimes it can actually make the bleeding worse because the uterus is like, oh yes, I have some estrogen, but it can just kind of add fuel to the fire. So I recommend talking to your clinician and finding something that works for you. All right, I've got time for about 2 more. Let's do one from Shelby. She writes, my running endurance has declined. Poor motivation, low mood, seems like a sudden change in the past few months, and I hate it. Okay, now you've heard that common theme. A lot of women will say, I just don't feel like myself anymore. This is actually, when you ask me, what's the thing that you hear the most, Dr. Hirsch? Is it hot flashes? Is it dryness? Is it, change in libido? I just don't recognize myself. I don't know who this girl is when I look in the mirror, especially for athletes. Now, here's an interesting take. So I think that women who are very athletic tend to have a little bit higher testosterone level because they're building lots of muscle, and so they're just naturally making testosterone. Let's talk about testosterone just for context. context. So lab results, when we look at labs, when we look at what's normal for women, which again, remember, women don't follow the textbook, but we see a reference range of testosterone typically ranging between 5 and 50 or 2 and 60 or something along those lines. So I have seen many athletic women run a little bit higher in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Other women who tend to run a little bit higher on testosterone is women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS. And for my athletes, when I see their testosterone levels start to come down, they can feel that poor endurance, low motivation, fatigue, brain fog, changes in mood. So Shelby, I might consider actually thinking about trying topical testosterone for you. Now, again, I'm a doctor, but not yours, education only. But here's what I tend to do if I'm worried about your testosterone. I first have you go check it and see what your testosterone levels are, both your total and your free, your sex hormone binding globulin. And of course, I also like to check your thyroid and vitamin D and your CBC and anything else. We just don't want to laser focus. It certainly could be something else, but common things happen commonly. And then might try you on some low dose transdermal testosterone. Now, how do you do testosterone for women? This is a great question. Thank you for asking. So the way that I like to do this is using a male dose and prescribing a 1/10 of that dose. You might think this is crazy, but in 2019, the North American Menopause Society, in conjunction with the British Menopause Society, the Endocrine Society, came out with a global consensus position statement paper on the use of testosterone in postmenopausal women. Now, you might be in perimenopause, but we're just going to throw you in that group. Why? Because it just hasn't been studied enough. But I've done this many, many times, putting perimenopausal women on testosterone, and they fare just as well, just the same as menopausal women do who need testosterone. Anywho, in that position statement, they say that actually transdermal testosterone in the form of a 1/10 of the male dose is the best way to do testosterone for women. And I actually agree. So this is how I do this. I get Testim gel. Testim gel comes in a box of 30. Why 30? That's a month's supply for a man. And he uses a little tube, kind of like the size of, say, a Neosporin, for 1 day's worth of an application. Female patients, on the other hand, try to make that tube last 10 days. It's about a pea-sized amount. You might be thinking, that doesn't sound too precise, and I hear you. It's just that in the United States, there is no female equivalent dosage for women to use testosterone. So the best thing we can do is either compound it or use the male dose and then dilute it by a 1/10. And I find that if we use the male dose, it just lasts longer because let's do some math. If there's 30 tubes and it lasts 10 days, 30 times 10 is 300. That means one box for your male partner, if you have one, could last you a whole year, where it lasts him a month. Okay. So win-win. So maybe, Shelby, you are looking at getting those testosterone levels checked. And again, chat with your doctor to see what's best for you. Oh my goodness, I got a great one here. Let me read this. Hi, I'm a male clinician who is still figuring out perimenopause for my patients. This is awesome. In fact, if you didn't know, I have a whole course for healthcare professionals, both for those who do prescribing and those for non-prescribers. Like, for example, if you're a nutritionist or a fitness trainer. And my course for clinicians could be for MDs, DOs, NPs, PAs, CNMs, even pharmacists. And this course has changed thousands of my clinicians' lives because we were not adequately trained on perimenopause and menopause or menopausal hormone therapy in medical school, nursing school, pharmacy school, etc. I have asked so many professionals and they say, nope, physical therapy school, not a word on menopause, which is crazy since, this impacts the whole female body, particularly the pelvis and the pelvic bowl. So many clinicians have only received about an hour of education on menopause and probably very, very little on hormone replacement therapy and probably even less, if that, on perimenopause. In fact, I don't know that I even heard the word perimenopause uttered in my 4 years of training. So why am I teaching a class? Why am I the one to do this? Who am I? Well, again, I did 2 years of training at the Cleveland Clinic in all things midlife and hormone therapy. And it was there that I really learned that everything I was taught, hormone therapy is dangerous and hormone therapy causes breast cancer and that should be just the last option for women was wrong. Once you really look at the evidence, which I go through in all my classes, you can see there is crystal clear safety and efficacy about menopausal hormone therapy. And of course, right now, it's all the rage. So if you are a clinician, you gotta know this stuff. You are bound to be asked by your patients, and I don't want you caught being embarrassed when your patients know more than you, because they're just surfing on social media and learning and devouring every single thing they can. Okay, so I did 2 years of fellowship training, and that's where I had my aha moment. Women were flying from all over the globe to go to Cleveland, nowhere super desirable, and to be diagnosed and treated with menopausal hormone therapy. And they came bouncing back in, looking just like brand new people, saying things like, "You saved my life." And I realized this was what I wanted to dedicate my life to. So I have been doing that for the last 12 years. And so I packaged everything I learned at my fellowship training, everything I've learned seeing patients over the last 12 years, and put it all in this incredible course. It comes with community. We do monthly live events. It's literally the absolute best. So you can check this out. Head to my website, heatherhirschacademy.com. And I love this because it's not at all that just women need to know about this. Our male colleagues are our partners in this. In fact, if you have a male in your life and you're listening to this, I bet he wants to know about perimenopause too, because you're experiencing changes. If most men have moms, sisters, wives, colleagues, coworkers that are going through perimenopause and menopause. Don't even get me started. In fact, this would be a great other podcast. How does perimenopause and menopause affect women at work? I'm going to put that on the list right now because we know that it does. And, women have missed work, made mistakes at work, etc. because of perimenopause and menopause. And again, this is a physiologic process. This is not women just, succumbing to their weaknesses. Women are so strong. So thank you for this comment. All right, I've got time for one more before wrapping this up. All right, to top this one off, this comment comes from Karen. Again, these were all submitted by women who pre-ordered the book and entered to win a coffee chat with me, but I'm answering some of them here because they're just so good. And Karen writes, "I'm actually postmenopausal, but I'm focusing my private therapy practice on supporting peri and menopausal women and educating young girls." So this is fantastic. Okay, let's do this in 2 parts. Let's do definitions because we throw these words around all the time. It's easiest to start by defining menopause. Menopause is 12 months, 1 year, 365 days of no bleeding. That day, menopause. Birthday cake, celebration, boop, menopause. The next day, postmenopause. Every day after that, postmenopause. Once you're postmenopausal, you're always postmenopausal. And then everything leading up to that is perimenopause. So when does perimenopause start? Again, this is why I wrote my brand new book, The Perimenopause Survival Guide, so that you can know when it starts. But research shows it can be 1 to 10 years before menopause, and symptoms can be all the things we've talked about here, and one of the biggest ones is changes in your periods. So those are your definitions, and that's helpful for you to go by. But what I love about this is that there is a huge impact on our mental health, and I want to go over the physiology of this. So as estrogen is declining, this actually leads to a drop in serotonin in your brain. Serotonin is a happy neurotransmitter. It's the one that kind of brings you calm and peace and joy and makes the sky look blue and not gray. And so estrogen really is a natural antidepressant in many ways. And research shows that women, when they use transdermal estrogen in perimenopause, this can improve their mood. I know this because actually I have been studying the research for so many years, and I actually just helped create a course to help professionals pass their Menopause Society certification exam, and this came up a lot. And so the impacts on mood are huge, and they don't exist in a silo. It's usually not just that your hormones are changing. I mean, you're in the middle of your life. You may also be caring for houses and spouses, pets, kids, everything. Life is just incredibly stressful. So trying to figure out what could be kind of nicking at your mood is really important. And therefore, having social workers and psychologists and psychiatrists aware of the physiologic changes that are happening to women, those hormonally mediated changes, can really help impact how they talk to and ultimately treat their patients. So thank you, Karen. Thank you so much. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening or watching. This was so fun to do because I just wrapped up doing the audiobook for the Perimenopause Survival Guide. So your girl's been in a booth for the last 5 days reading her book out loud, and I am so proud of this book, right? Most books about menopause actually have just like a few pages in there about perimenopause, including my first book, which is Unlock Your Menopause Type. And because perimenopause can be one all the way up to 10 years before menopause, this can be an entire decade. Did you hear me right? An entire decade before menopause even starts. And it's so important that you get the proper treatment, you get the right diagnosis, and that you start to put together some of these crazy, seemingly unrelated symptoms to one place with one clinician. So where can you find a clinician? Well, there's a couple places that you can go. For all the clinicians that I have trained who've taken my courses, go to the heatherhirschdirectory.com and you can actually search by state and it will show you which doctors are available in your state and if they do telemedicine or if they have a physical practice. And I also recommend you check out menopause.org. This is all the clinicians who have taken their certification exam and are certified by the Menopause Society. And you can look for a clinician there. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you learned a lot along the way. If you don't already follow me, check me out on socials. I'm at Heather Hirsch MD on Instagram, on TikTok, and I would love, love, love for you to join, follow along, listen to my stories, weigh in on things. I talk about what you guys want me to talk about. So I will see you next week for a brand new episode. Bye, guys.